Have you ever looked at an old photo of your grandparents or heard a passing story about your great-grandparents and wondered, what's the full story here? Maybe it was a moment of curiosity or nostalgia. But what if I told you those untold stories are far more important than you think? They could hold lessons that change the way you see the world, solve problems, and even reshape your future. So let me start with this. Why don't we know these stories? Why are so many family histories kept locked away in silence or forgotten entirely? For me, this realization came when I stumbled upon a dusty box in my family's attic. Inside were letters written in a language I barely understood, photos of people whose faces looked vaguely familiar, and a journal that belonged to my great-grandfather. That journal was the spark. It wasn't just a collection of memories. It was a roadmap to how my family survived, thrived, and ultimately led to me being here today. And yet no one had ever told me these stories. Why? Because no one asked. Now, before we go any further, let me ask you something. If you had the chance, what's one story you'd want to know about your family? A decision, a struggle, or a moment of joy that shaped the people who came before you? When I started asking these questions in my own family, I uncovered things I never expected. My grandfather told me about how his parents fled their homeland with nothing but a suitcase and a dream of a better life. My grandmother revealed that she secretly wrote stories during her childhood, a fact no one in the family had ever known. These stories weren't just interesting, they were profound. They helped me understand my family's values, their resilience, and even how I approach challenges today. But it's not just me. Science backs this up. Research has shown that families who share their stories, especially the hard ones, create stronger bonds, higher emotional resilience, and even better problem-solving skills in younger generations. Think about that for a second. Stories aren't just entertainment. They're survival tools passed down from one generation to the next.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more topics you love.
So why don't we share them? Why do so many stories get lost? For one time, we assume there will always be a later time, another Thanksgiving, another weekend visit, another chance to ask. But the truth is, there won't always be a later. And by the time we're ready to ask, the people who hold the answers might not be around anymore. Another reason? We underestimate the value of our own stories. Maybe your parents or grandparents think their lives were too ordinary to be worth telling. But here's the secret. It's not the drama or the grandeur that makes a story valuable. It's the lessons, the emotions, and the connections. Let me ask you again, what's one question you've never asked your parents or grandparents? Now, let's talk about what to do with these stories, because uncovering them is only the first step. First, record them. You don't need a fancy setup. Your phone's voice recorder is enough. Capture these stories before they fade. Second, preserve the physical pieces of your family history. That means organizing old photos, letters, and documents. Digitize them if you can, and don't just label them with names and dates. Add context. What was happening in the world at the time? How did it shape your family's journey? Third, tell your own story. Your life today is part of the family history that future generations will look back on. Start keeping a journal, writing letters, or recording your thoughts. These small actions can create a legacy that lasts far beyond your lifetime. Let's go even deeper into why these untold stories matter, not just to you, but to everyone connected to your family. Imagine this. Decades from now, a great-grandchild you'll never meet stumbles across something you left behind. Maybe they read it or hear it, and for a brief moment they see you not as a distant ancestor, but as someone just like them, someone who lived, loved, struggled, and dreamed. That connection across time is what makes family stories so powerful. They remind us that we're part of something much bigger than ourselves. But let's not wait until decades pass to understand this. The stories you uncover today can shape your life right now. They can teach you how your family handled adversity, how they celebrated victories, and how they made decisions in times of uncertainty. For example, let's say you're going through a tough time. Maybe you feel stuck or unsure of your next step. When you dig into your family's past, you might find someone who faced something similar and came out stronger. Or their experience becomes a roadmap, not because they had all the answers, but because they navigated challenges with courage and determination. Think about this. What challenges in your life could be reframed if you knew how your ancestors dealt with their struggles? But it's not just about looking back, it's about looking forward. When you start sharing these stories with others in your family, especially younger generations, something incredible happens. Kids who know their family's history tend to be more resilient. They have what psychologists call a strong intergenerational self. They understand that life isn't always easy, but they also know they come from a line of people who faced challenges and kept going. That knowledge builds confidence and a sense of belonging. Imagine how powerful it would be for your children or grandchildren to grow up knowing that they come from a family of survivors, innovators, and dreamers. Imagine the pride they'd feel in carrying that legacy forward. Schedule storytelling time. Set aside time at family gatherings to focus on storytelling. It doesn't have to be formal. You can simply ask, "What's one thing you remember about growing up?" Or, "What's the funniest thing that ever happened to you?" The goal is to create a space where stories naturally flow. Create a digital time capsule. Use tools like video or audio recordings to preserve stories. You can even create a shared cloud folder where everyone can upload photos, letters, or recordings. Turn stories into traditions. Incorporate storytelling into your family traditions. For example, during holidays, you could share one story about an ancestor or a family event that's connected to the season. Over time, these stories will become part of the fabric of your family. Involve everyone, younger family members, to share their perspectives too. This creates a two-way exchange and ensures that the family narrative continues to grow. And here's the most important part. Don't worry about doing it perfectly. Your family's stories don't need to be polished or complete to be meaningful. Even fragments of memories can spark something powerful. For instance, when my grandmother shared her childhood stories, she didn't remember every detail, but that didn't matter. What mattered was the emotion in her voice, the values she conveyed, and the way her stories brought our family closer together. So let me ask you one last question. What's the first step you'll take to uncover your family's untold stories? Maybe it's a phone call to a relative, a conversation around the dinner table, or simply setting aside time to reflect on your own life. Whatever it is, take that step today. Because here's the truth. These stories aren't just about the past. They're about building a future rooted in connection, identity, and love. Your family's untold stories matter more than you think. Start asking, start listening, and start preserving them. Because one day, someone will thank you for it. Let's explore what happens when we truly embrace the power of family stories, not just as personal narratives, but as living legacies that influence everything from how we see ourselves to how we live our lives. When you uncover and share these stories, something extraordinary happens. It's like unlocking a treasure chest, but instead of gold or jewels, you find wisdom, strength, and a deeper understanding of what it means to belong. Think about this. Every family has its own unique DNA of stories. These stories shape the culture of the family, its traditions, its values, and even its unspoken rules. They explain why certain things are important, why specific behaviors are celebrated, or why some topics feel taboo. For example, maybe your family has always emphasized hard work and perseverance. When you dig into the stories, you might discover that your ancestors faced incredible hardships, wars, migrations, economic struggles, and survived because they never gave up. Suddenly, that emphasis on hard work isn't just a rule, it's a testament to the strength of the people who came before you. Or maybe your family has a deep sense of humor, even in tough times. By exploring their stories, you might find that laughter was how they coped with adversity. It wasn't just a personality trait, it was a survival mechanism. So, here's another question for you. What values or habits in your family might be rooted in untold stories? When we start uncovering these stories, we also begin to see patterns of behavior, decision-making, and even struggles that repeat across generations. This is where things get fascinating. Have you ever noticed that certain challenges seem to run in families? Maybe it's a tendency to take big risks, or a pattern of staying in safe, predictable careers. Maybe it's a cycle of migration, with each generation moving to a new place to start fresh. These patterns aren't random. They're part of your family's collective story. By understanding these patterns, you gain insight into your own life. You start to see how your choices are connected to the past and how you can shape the future. Let me give you an example. But this isn't just about looking back, it's about looking forward. When you understand your family's stories, you can break harmful cycles, reinforce positive patterns, and even create new traditions that reflect the kind of legacy you want to leave. For example, if your family has a history of avoiding difficult conversations, you might decide to change that. You could start by sharing your own stories openly and encouraging others to do the same. Over time, this can create a culture of honesty and vulnerability in your family, a gift that will benefit future generations. Or maybe your family has a tradition of gathering for big celebrations, but you notice that these gatherings often focus more on food than connection. You could introduce a new tradition. Before the meal, everyone shares a story about something they're grateful for. This small change could deepen the bonds within your family and create memories that last a lifetime. Now, let's talk about legacy, because that's what this is really about. When you uncover, share, and preserve your family's stories, you're doing more than honoring the past. You're creating a bridge between generations, a way for the wisdom of the past to guide the future. Imagine what it would feel like to know that your efforts made a difference. that because of you, your children, grandchildren, or even great-grandchildren will have a clearer sense of who they are and where they come from. But legacy isn't just about what you leave behind. It's about how you live now. When you embrace the stories of your family, you carry their lessons with you every day. You make decisions with greater clarity, face challenges with greater courage, and celebrate joys with greater gratitude. So here's the final question. What legacy do you want to create for your family? And what stories will you tell to make that legacy come alive? The time to start is now. Don't wait for the perfect moment or the perfect words. Call a grandparent. Sit down with your parents. Ask the questions you've always been curious about. And don't stop there. Write your own story too. Because one day, someone will look back at your life and ask, what was their story? Your family's untold stories are waiting to be discovered. And when you take the time to uncover them, you're not just preserving history, you're creating a legacy of connection, resilience, and love.